The seniors have gone. We're just left with freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, and we're down to our last 2 weeks of school. This is just about the last thing we have to learn. There's no new vocab this week, but this week we are learning 2 new ways to conjugate verbs. That is the present perfect and the past perfect. With this, we are going back to the indicative. So we're setting aside subjunctive, except for when you do your features during the week, but this is part of the indicative. So let's jump in. The present perfect. What is the present perfect? Well, let's define it in English first. You use this all the time, but you probably just don't know what it's called. So why is it called perfect? This tense is used with actions that happened at an unspecified time before now. They have happened. This is saying that something has happened. It's using have or has with a past participle. For example, saying, I have eaten today. She has showered today. So how do we form this in Spanish? To form it, we combine the present tense of the helping verb haber with a past participle. Something I forgot to mention on the previous slide is that anything that has green or any words that are in green are something that you should write down. Anything in black is optional. You can write it down. I don't feel like you necessarily have to. Okay, so back up. We combine the present tense of the verb haber with a past participle. So haber has a few different meanings. Sometimes we can conjugate it and it means in the present tense, like it's I, H-A-Y, which is there is or there are. In the preterite, it's hubo, there was or there were. But it can also be used as a helping verb, which is that have or has in present perfect. So here we have we're using that with a past participle. I have a couple examples here. No he reparado la bicicleta todavía. I haven't repaired the bicycle yet. ¿Qué trabajos has tenido? What jobs have you had? So these are the forms. These are the forms of haber. Make sure you jot these down. And then we will pronounce them. It looks like he has ha. I know that. But it's has, a, hemos, habéis, on. Meaning, I have, you have, he has, we have, you all have, they have, but not like I have a cat or she has a dog. Okay, that's tener. You already know how to do that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about saying I have eaten. So there, have is acting as a helping verb. So these are our present perfect forms, and then we need the past participle. So how do you form a past participle? This isn't something we've done a lot with in Spanish. I do think you saw this briefly in Spanish too, but maybe not everybody did. So how do you form a past participle? Saying studied, eaten, believed, all sorts of different things. Usually in English they end in an ed, but we have lots of irregular past participles. So for AR verbs, you remove the AR and you add auto to the end. And then for ER and IR verbs, you remove the ER and IR and you add ido to the end. So for example, estudiar becomes estudiado, comer becomes comido, vivir becomes vivido. There are, unfortunately, quite a few irregulars with this. So here is a list of these. There will not be a quiz over this. We are done with quizzes for the semester. We're just going to be practicing. But if you go on to Spanish 4, you will need to know these. So that's why we're doing the practice. So abrir becomes abierto. So saying I have opened the door. Abierto, opened. Cubrir becomes cubierto. That means covered. Decir to dicho, so said, saying I have said this before. So dicho. Escribir changes to escrito, so written. Freír changes to frito, meaning fried. So fritos literally just means frieds. Hacer changes to hecho, which means made, saying I have made. If you ever look at the labels on your clothing, it'll often say hecho en whatever place, like made in the United States, made in Mexico, hecho en, and that's where that word comes from. It's an irregular past participle. Morir changes to muerto, so Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, saying like she has died, ella ha muerto. Poner changes to puesto, meaning put or set. Resolver to resuelto, to resolve, or resolved. Romper changes to roto. Romper means to break, so roto means broken. I have broken, she has broken. Volver changes to vuelto, returned, and ver changes to visto, seen. I have seen, you have seen. Additionally, just a little note here is that there are accents on stems that end in a vowel. So the Y guys, the ones that, the sandal verbs that change I to Y, and then UIR verbs, this does not apply to them. But this is a list of some of those that you may see. That is not going to be a big deal this year, but it will come up again in Spanish 4, so I just wanted to mention it. So here is a verb conjugated all the way through in the present perfect. I have talked, you have talked, he has talked, etc. So that would be he hablado, has hablado, ha hablado, hemos hablado, habéis hablado, and han hablado. Keep in mind, and I'll mention this in a little bit, but keep in mind that this is our conjugated portion. This past participle is not going to change based on who it is, kind of like with the present progressive. In that form, I could say trabajando or estudiando, no matter who it is, whether it's a boy or a girl or multiple people or just one person. I'm not going to change that form. I'm only changing that form of haber that's at the beginning here. So a couple side notes for you. This is a compound verb tense, just like present progressive. It requires both words to have meaning. If you only have a, that HE, or if you only had hablado, it would not mean I have talked. It has to have both he hablado to have the meaning that you intend. This is what I was just talking about. So our helping verb haber is conjugated, but the past participle doesn't change regardless of who it is, masculine, feminine, singular, plural, doesn't matter. We don't match it. It's a verb, so that doesn't really apply here. And then this is important. We've talked about this before with other compound verbs, but I want to make sure to bring it up here again. The helping verb, so he, has, ha, hemos, habéis, han, and the participle that ends in the ado or the ito are never separated like they sometimes are in English. So I can say I have already gone, and I'm splitting up the have and the gone. But in Spanish, I can't do that. Remember, compound verbs are like a happily married couple. We've talked about this before. You don't want to split them up. And so we need to keep them together. So any other words, whether it's a pronoun or making it negative, putting a no, or here this ya, which means already, any of those have to go on one side or the other. They normally go in front. They cannot go in between. You cannot split up a compound verb in Spanish. And so that is kind of going into this. Place negative words, object pronouns, direct object pronouns, or indirect object pronouns, and reflexive pronouns before the form of haber. So my examples here. No he hecho la tarea. I have not done the homework. The no has to go in front. Even though in English I say I have not done. The not comes between the have and the done, but it has to go in front in Spanish. Another example here. Mi profesora me ha escrito una carta de recomendación. She has written me a letter of recommendation. The me goes in front of that compound verb form. And then the last one, me he duchado hoy. I have showered today. Has to go in front. That is reflexive. Okay. So a couple examples. I would love for you to give this a shot in your own notebooks. Go ahead and hit pause, and when you come back, I will have the answers for you. Let's take a look. You have seen is has visto. You, of course, could put tu in front. You could say tu has visto. We have listened to her. Nosotros hemos escuchado a ella. I've already cooked dinner. You could put yo in front. Ya he cocinado la cena. He has called 6 times. Either él ha llamado or just ha llamado 6 veces, and they have waited, han esperado, or ellos han esperado. That's present perfect. Let's talk about past perfect. This will go much more quickly because it's really just learning another box. Otherwise, all the same things apply. So what is the past perfect tense? This tense describes an action in the past that occurred before another action in the past. I don't know if you've ever thought about it that way. In English, we combine the word had with a past participle. I had studied. He had written a letter. So normally we say those things like, I had studied before I realized there wasn't a quiz today. Or he had written a letter before he knew she moved. Something like that. We don't have to have another part of the sentence, but very often we do. So my little diagram down here, it's like something happens in the past. That's what that X is. And I'm saying something had already happened before that X, before that other event. That's past perfect. That's when we normally use it. So how do we form this? We combine the imperfect form of haber with a past participle. These are our new endings. So this is actually a little bit easier, I think, than the present perfect. So saying I had done something, había, habías, había, habíamos, habíais, habían, and then that participle. It's the same participle that we learned how to form in the last section. So our example here, I'm using hablar again. Había hablado, I had talked. Habías hablado, había hablado, habíamos hablado, habíais hablado, and habían hablado. And then just a little bit of practice, same as before. Go ahead and hit pause, and I will have the answers when you come back. Ready for the answers? We had already eaten. Ya habíamos comido. Same as before, the nosotros could go in front. They had already left. Ya habían salido. You had seen the movie. Habías visto la película. Mrs. Beatty had said no. Mrs. Beatty había dicho no. And había cantado la canción. I had sung the song. Next week, we are going to be learning the last two tenses, future perfect and conditional perfect, which will be even easier than this once you get this down. We'll have a couple practice activities this week. Please join us during the office hours. I'll be doing some activities with present and past perfect as well. And as always, let me know if you have any questions. Hasta luego.